Hi folks, thanks for joining me here today. This is Kathryn from Research Rockstar, and today I'd like to talk about the skills that may be key to market research and insight success. And specifically, let's look at soft skills. So to start the conversation today, I'd like to ask you a question. In your experience, have you ever had challenges managing clients? Okay, now for those of you who've been in research for a long time, how about even in the last 30 days? Have you had experiences where managing clients was difficult? Now, whether you're managing internal clients or external clients, so depending if you're a corporate researcher on an insights team or you work at a full service research agency or consultancy, you're serving clients ultimately, right? Whether they're internal clients or external clients, we have, as market research and insights professionals, the goal of making sure that they are satisfied with the work that we do and that they put it to good use. Have you ever experienced challenges on that path? Now, if you've been in market research for more than a few days, you may have experienced a challenge or two. So if you're thinking, no, Kathryn, it always goes beautifully, there are no problems managing clients, then let me ask you the question again and a little bit more precisely. Have you ever experienced any of these situations? Pain in terms of setting and managing client expectations, maybe challenges while trying to anticipate client roadblocks, maybe problems trying to ensure that client interests don't conflict with objectivity. Now, that's one I know many of us have experienced. If you've been in research for a while, there is definitely situations where the client is very passionate about something that we're researching. For example, I've done a lot of product concept testing work in my career. And when you're working with a company on product concept testing work, well, frankly, you are doing research that is about things that people really care about. The product developers, the people who came up with these ideas for these products are really vested in them. And if I do research and the results are coming in a little bit negative, there can be some conflict there, right? And so it's my job to keep the research objective, but I also have to manage that client who has clearly got some bias. After all, I don't want to be the person to tell my client that their product that they're so proud of, or that this concept that they're so proud of, is actually got a very high chance of meeting with a lot of demand deterrence. It's kind of like telling somebody that their baby is ugly, right? It's a really hard thing to say to somebody. And so this is a great example of a very common challenge that many market researchers experience. How about problems with leading clients? Well, one-on-one meetings tend to go pretty smoothly, but what if it's a team, right? Sometimes these days you're working with clients and there could be several people participating in those meetings. Has that ever been a challenge? Or how about facilitating collaborative processes with clients? Have you ever had problems with that? After all, some of these collaborative processes that we have in research can be iterative, and they can often be important junctures in our projects. So, for example, let's take instrument design. Whether your instrument is a questionnaire or a discussion guide or a set of tasks that are going to be used in an online qualitative method. Well, when we're trying to design an instrument, we typically have a collaborative and iterative process. And managing that really can be hard. For example, have you ever done a project where you were working with a client on survey research and you ended up with 5 iterations of the questionnaire before you got to approval? How about 10? Now, I've been doing market research for a really long time, and I can absolutely tell you that I have had cases where we had more than 10 iterations leading to client approval. That kind of onerous process is usually not full of joy. You know, when you go through that many iterations, it's usually because there's some challenges along the way. So that can be an example of a part of our work as market research and insights professionals where we're having a challenge and it really is about client management. How about, have you ever had a problem trying to get thoughtful and timely approvals from clients, maybe on report drafts, right? Or maybe on screening criteria? That can be a really difficult thing too. Our clients are super busy and sometimes they don't, they don't have the time when we need them to have the time to make those approvals. Yet we want them to be part of the process. So those are some challenges. Any other challenges that you've experienced with managing clients? Now that we're getting specific. All right, here's another one that I've experienced. Helping clients to use the research results. I have absolutely had projects where I was supporting executives who were enthusiastic about the research results but just seemed stuck. How do we put it into action? And sometimes that happens, unfortunately, with some of the more strategic projects that we do, because when we're doing a really high-end strategic project, the results may have implications that are really big, implications that may require business process change. For example, I've done a lot of market segmentation studies, and when you bring in a new segmentation model to an existing company, right, that can have implications for their sales processes, their marketing processes. It can be a really huge thing. So helping clients to use the research results can absolutely be challenging. So maybe you haven't experienced all of these things, but I got a hunch that most of us have experienced at least a few of them. Let's take a closer look then at, if we consider these client management tasks, let's take a closer look at one of them to see what are the skills that we would need in order to mitigate this risk, in order to make sure that this aspect of client management is one that we can handle really, really well. So let's dive into the example about the skills required for excellence facilitating collaborative processes. Again, let's use questionnaire design as a simple example. So if you're working with a client on a questionnaire design, they are clearly turning to you as the expert, but it is an iterative process. You are typically going to have hopefully just a few drafts before you get client approval. And that can actually be great, right? Because your client is probably the subject matter expert, right? They probably have a lot of existing knowledge about their customer base and about their products. They probably have done past research in this category. So we want the collaborative process so that we get the benefit of their knowledge. But we also want the collaborative process because it helps to get them to buy into the research results. So we get a lot of benefit from really great collaboration. But collaboration with clients can sometimes be challenging. Well, it turns out that there's a lot of research on collaboration and the skills that leaders who do a good job with collaboration have. And now, I will say this, some of this research is not specific to the market research and insights profession, but a lot of the research is specific to business services, professional services, and actually also health-related services, which I know sounds really different, but if you think about it, that's another category, another profession where you have people who are advising their clients. So collaboration is important. Well, if we look across many of these studies that are about facilitating collaboration, we see some recurring themes about the attributes of the leaders who do a great job at it. And I'm going to read you some of the recurring themes here, and then I'm going to talk about what some of the challenges are. So some of the themes that come up in the research on leading collaborative teams effectively have to do with the leader being flexible, respectful, trustworthy, and empathetic. Now, there are other attributes, but those are four that come up on a repeated basis when we read across these various studies. Now, flexibility seems to be a pretty logical one. If I'm trying to facilitate a questionnaire design process, a collaborative process, I do need to have some flexibility. I'm not there to dictate an answer. Respectful, I thought, was an interesting one in a lot of this research. And respectful, actually, when you actually kind of get into how the research was done, is really kind of a construct of a few different things. And a key element has to do with being able to be perceived as respectful. You have to be able to control your own emotions. So the successful leader here is going to be somebody who is perceived as respectful because they are able to regulate their own emotions and regulate their own participation. So the good leader in the situation is going to be the person who can be respectful and really listen to other people's contributions without rushing them and without forcing in their own 2 cents about things. So being respectful, a lot of that really actually comes from the leader's ability to control themselves and what can sometimes be, some minor conflicts. Trustworthy, this one I love too. Perceptions that the leader is trustworthy has a huge impact on whether or not the collaborative process is going to be successful. And empathetic. Now, in some ways, these things all go together, right? Being flexible, respectful, trustworthy, and empathetic, these things all have some relationship to each other. It turns out that they also are things you often read about if you've ever done any reading about emotional intelligence. Now, I don't want to get too much into emotional intelligence. That's a huge topic. Just briefly, if the concept is new to you, emotional intelligence first started to become kind of mainstream about 20 years ago. Actually, maybe a little bit more than 20 years ago. I think it was sort of like in the late 90s when I first heard the term. But there started to be research about it around, around 2000 was when you first start seeing some really mainstream studies about it. And the idea is that in studying emotional intelligence in leaders, that they did find in various studies that there was a relationship that successful leaders have high emotional intelligence. It's not really surprising, but it's a really interesting opportunity to get specific. And some of these things are clearly about emotional intelligence. If I'm able to have the team that I am leading or the team that I'm facilitating, right? I'm the researcher, I'm facilitating this collaborative process of designing a questionnaire. I do need to have that emotional intelligence so that I am perceived as flexible, respectful, trustworthy, and empathetic. And some of these things aren't that easy. I will be the first to admit that if I were to have people evaluate me, I would probably get pretty low scores on empathy. And the reason why is I'm impatient. I like to make decisions. If I've got the facts, I've got the information, I want to make a decision, and I get very impatient. I also get very impatient when information gets repeated, or if I feel like we're talking about the same thing over and over and over again. I could never play poker because it's all over my face. So empathy, while I like to think of myself as being empathetic, the truth is that in business situations, I can be a very impatient person. So I know that that's something I have to work on. If I'm going to be perceived as empathetic, I need to do a better job of controlling my emotions, as it were, in that particular case. So how about for you? Think you're doing all you could do in order to be perceived as flexible by your clients? Are you doing everything you can to be perceived as being respectful, as being trustworthy? Or maybe you're like me and you're not the most patient person in the world, in which case, like me, you may not be getting perceived as being particularly empathetic. Okay, so hopefully I've done a good job of convincing you that not only is client management important, but it really is hard. We've all experienced pain with client management. And to do client management well, it turns out that it's really a lot of these soft skills, these emotional intelligence factors that can really be the success, right? These are the things that we need to do if we want to do a really great job with a lot of the processes that are part of client management. Now, it turns out that not only is it just logical that we have things that are part of client management that require soft skills, but it turns out that there's a whole nother body of research that shows that there's a very important relationship. There's a tight correlation between satisfaction with professional services firms and the perception that they do a good job on client management. So again, some of these studies are not, well, actually none of these studies are really precisely about market research, although one of them is about the advertising agency business. So there are various studies that are specifically looking at what impacts client satisfaction with professional services, and a recurring theme across these studies is that it has to do with client management. And again, the key constructs that come up have to do with being trustworthy, knowledgeable, and sympathetic. So studies that capture these things find that there is a high correlation between being perceived as trustworthy, knowledgeable, and sympathetic with satisfaction with professional services firms. Now, this is interesting to us in market research because in market research, we often focus a lot on methodology excellence and data analysis and awesome deliverables. And look, all of those things are clearly important. But in market research, are we focusing too much on the hard skills, not enough on the soft skills? If we are having challenges with client management and we know that client management is important, maybe that's an opportunity for improvement. Maybe that's something that we need to just be thinking about as you're planning for either your own or your team's ongoing career advancement. Now, when we talk about soft skills, I do think it's important to point out that we can look at soft skills in a wide variety of ways. Sometimes when you talk to people about soft skills and like training and developing soft skills, they focus really on communication skills. And communication skills are truly important, right? We know that. That's a duh. But some of these other things are important too. So if we decide that we really want to improve client management excellence in our work, and we've decided that's something we want to do, should we be investing more of our effort into soft skills? So I'm not saying that that's going to be the right answer for everybody, but it is definitely something worth considering. Now, I know that today I've cited a bunch of different research and different sources. I just want to let you know that the citations for that are in a longer article that is on the Research Rockstar website. If you go over to researchrockstar.com/blog, the most current article will be on the soft skills in market research, and that's going to have all your citations there. So please do enjoy the article if you're into reading some of the academic research. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. And if you have been enjoying this series of conversations, and I hope that you have, please remember that it is available both on iTunes as an audio-only version, as well as on YouTube if you want the video podcast. And as always, I'm very grateful for new subscribers and for reviews and likes. The more reviews and likes we get on YouTube and on iTunes, the better the YouTube and iTunes search engines treat us. So help me get found, help us spread some of this free training and career advice to your fellow market research and insights professionals, and help us get found on YouTube and iTunes. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please do add them here. You can also always contact me at Research Rockstar, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Research Rocks. Thanks, folks. Have a great day.